Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
All right, there we go. Technical issues sorted. Hello and welcome to Game Over Calgary. My name's Conrad Krausert. And in what would be described by some as a lucky game, some will say a fantastic way for Rasmus Andersson to maybe play his last game as the Flame. But for many, it'll just be another loss for the 2025-2026 Calgary Flames. I'm your host, Conrad Krausert, and welcome back once again. Obviously not the result that any of us want. I got to shove this chair that I was like out of the frame. But hey, nothing's perfect, and the Flames lose the second half of the Johnny Gaudreau Memorial Series, obviously. Johnny and Matthew, ever in our hearts and forever in our minds as Flames fans and Blue Jackets fans. Great to see some of the video coming up from the Flames, having kids, both Johnny and Matt, out on the ice, Uncle Rasmus getting a skate around, and hey, Uncle Rasmus will be in Columbus a little bit more if some of the rumors that we're hearing do tend to come true. But anyways, we'll break it all down here for Game Over Flames. We got lots to discuss when that, and I actually have a pre-written segment for once on. But before we do any of that, if you're joining us in chat today, please go and hit that like button. Hey, and if it isn't too much to ask, go share it out on your socials, whether that be X, the Everything app, if you're still on there, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram. Share it loud, share it proud. We're trying to continue to allow us to grow this stream, grow the network overall. But anyways, we'll jump right into this one, as at least the fans were here to start the game. I'm not sure the Calgary Flames were, as it was kind of one of the most apoplectic, your $10 word for the day. First period for the Calgary Flames is it didn't look like any of them wanted to play the game of hockey. First goal is just not a lot of back check, not a lot of effort from 91 and 17. Of course, I'm meaning Nazem Kadri and Igor Sharangovich. Allows Fabro to control the puck at the line, throws it past Dustin Wolf. And I know I'm probably beating a dead horse here, but Igor Sharangovich's defensive play has been getting worse and worse, not getting better and better, despite the fact that we have a defensive-minded head coach here in Calgary. So, a little rough, don't you think, to have that happen. And God, Nazem Kadri has looked completely uninterested as soon as the puck crosses over the red line. I don't think that's the only time I'm going to say that today, looking to the future, folks. And oh my God, I just really underside of the brim of my hat here. Speaking of which, shout out to the Meadows Canada Jump Hat. 51st year coming up. That wasn't the only goal in the first period, as Charlie Coyle scores his 8th of the year. And again, just Flames unable to clear the line. Igor Sharangovich out on the ice once again, and just a lot of guys floating. That includes the captain, Michael Backlund, who kind of gets into the middle of everyone, but somehow allows Charlie Coyle to find space in behind him. 2 goals in the first 20 minutes for the Blue Jackets. Could have been much, much worse, as they lead in the shot category 10-8 after 20 minutes. But as we all know, games of hockey are not only the first 20. And the Flames had a much, much better second period. Despite the fact that there were some, I don't want to call them necessarily questionable calls. But the Rasmus Andersson fight was involved here. And the Boone Jenner obviously instigating that. Flames got real testy in that second. But after that 9-minute ish mark. The Calgary Flames played much better. Led to the 2 goals. Morgan Frost on the power play exactly at 12 minutes in. And you know what? The Calgary Flames power play got it done today. So, was good work at the line. I believe it was Kevin Ball, which is shocking, out on the blue line there. But it was Sharangovich actually walking the line. Backlund throws it back out front. And it kind of just bounces off Morgan Frost and finds its way through Jet Greaves. And you know what? Sometimes when you're playing terrible hockey like the Calgary Flames have done most of this, you need to have the ugly garbage goals. And for a guy like Morgan Frost, who has been very visibly struggling and been up and down all the way down to the 4th line for this Flames lineup, good to see him get the goal, even if he was kind of looking at the iPad trying to see if he could somehow give that to Michael Backlund, not one. But Frost gets his 9th of the year. And man, you didn't watch the game. You were playing Roller Coaster Tycoon. I can't blame you watching Calgary Flames hockey. Well, but the Flames actually scored 3 times on the power play. Not going to spoil anything really, because we all have watched the game, hope. But then, yeah, just before the end of the second, the Flames managed to tie it up. Face-off play, Backlund wins the draw. Sharangovich kind of just sets the tee up, and Rasmus Anderson howitzers home what could very well be his final goal, wearing the flaming on that, obviously. But a great goal, face-off play from that second unit of the Flames power play. And, of course, I'm calling it the second unit because it's lacking Kadri and Huberdeau. But honestly, maybe we should be calling it the first line because Kadri and Huberdeau have been invisible for the last, let's call it, 2 weeks. Go back to Christmas Day or New Year's Day. So, Flames managed to use a strong second period to draw this one back to level. 20 minutes left in the game. We all know how it ended, but good to see there from your Calgary Flames. Shots heavily did favor the Blue Jackets, however, 14-7. Flames opportunity in that period, despite, I think, controlling the play for about 11 minutes. However, the Flames, usually very stout, penalty kill does give up a goal in the first 5 minutes. 5-on-3 power play, and goodness gracious, like, before we talk about the goal, talk about the 2 penalties there to open the third. Igor Sharangovich penalty, I agree. Who was on the colors today? It wasn't Kelly Rudy. Happy birthday to Kelly Rudy, by the way. Anyways, if you're not allowed to stick lift in the NHL, it's what sport are we playing? I thought that was a pretty textbook stick lift in pursuit from Sharangovich. I didn't think it was really in the hands. Because if you slash the hands, that's one thing. If you hooked and dragged the hands, that's another. I think you get the stick, you lift it, that's a legal play. Okay, my audio's a bit wonky. I set up a noise gate with this new setup. It could be a little overprotective. Quickly here. Actually, I'll just turn it off for today. All right, because I've turned off all my fans and stuff today. So, we'll get back into this. Yeah, Igor Sharangovich, I thought the stick lift was fine. I didn't think it was all that bad, but obviously was a penalty. Yan Kuznetsov's probably closer to a call. Gets his stick into the skates of Kent Johnson. 5-on-3. Flames do their best, but our stout penalty kill that hadn't given up a goal since the game after Christmas, that was to a guy named Connor McDavid, if I remember correctly, did finally break, and it's 5-on-3. You're doing what you can. But the Flames, sometimes in this Flames season, that would see the Calgary Flames wilt and stop playing. However, it is the captain who puts home a rebound past Jet Greaves. Third power play marker of the game, assist to Morgan Frost and Connor Zary. But yeah, another set play, and Rasmus Andersson started it off, so how sweet it is to see him play as well as he did today, including the fight. I was hoping he got an assist on that third goal so we could give him a Gordie Howe hat trick in one of his final games as a Flame. Didn't get it. But yeah, Flames battle back, and then unfortunately 2 goals in the final minute as Mackenzie Weegar just doesn't get any assistance from the Calgary Flames' number 1 center, who is apparently a two-way player, but doesn't want to be in his own zone when the time starts ticking down. Kadri flies the zone. Weegar can't get it clear of the forecheck from Sean Monahan. Turns it over to Boone Jenner. Boone Jenner slots it past Dustin Wolf with just over a minute 30 remaining in the game. They get an empty netter to end it after the Flames put some pressure on, but hey, Calgary Flames could not win a faceoff around the pairing of Charlie Coyle and Sean Monahan in the final 30 or 90 seconds. The Columbus Blue Jackets come away with a first win for their new head coach, Rock Bowness, and even the Goudreau Memorial Series, both teams picking up one side of the series. Of course, I remember that first game was the 5-1 defeat for Columbus back on November 5th. So what does this mean for your Calgary Flames? Where are the Calgary Flames right now? Because you go out east, and let's be real about this. You lose to the two heavyweights at the start of your road swing. You kind of expect that, despite the fact that the Bruins aren't playing very good hockey recently. And I think the Canadiens lost again today. But they've been good. And the Bruins, hot and cold. Then you go and beat the Penguins. And we'll talk about my thoughts on something my dad texted me in period number 2. That's the pre-written rant that I've got. So you managed to pick up 2 points against one of the worst teams in the East that before the season had declared their season already dead, and were just kind of trying to ride out the careers of Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. Of course, there were the trade talks and rumors of people not necessarily in the know, but thinking, hey, it would be kind of nice for Sid to end his career in Montreal. Who knows if that will happen? Who knows if the salary cap will make it work? But regardless, you beat the Penguins. Congratulations. That's a battle of the basement. You managed to pick up the 2 points, even though I would argue you don't want those 2 points. And then you go into the Columbus Blue Jackets, another one of the worst teams in the East. They just fired their coach. Rock Bowness has been there for 2 days. He wasn't even an assistant, guys. He wasn't in the system. And you find a way to lose. So yes, Team Tank, we're celebrating. But this brings me into the rant, brings me into period number 2. Before we do that, just, hey, make sure you hit that like. I know I touched on it twice. If you want to go look at what Andrew's been doing with some penalty records, that's on the Game Over website. I've heard he's starting to look into the Calgary Flames in the post-Dennis Wideman era to kind of give us a snapshot of what's been going on here out west as far as minor penalties and how they've been called against the Calgary Flames. So keep an eye out on the GameOver.com website. But I gotta open up a script here, folks, because I generally don't pre-script anything on this show. But I sat down yesterday because I had a text conversation with my dad. Me and my dad, huge Flames fans. My dad and my mom have had season tickets since before I was born. Now they split them. They go to as many games as they can, but as I've discussed on the show, mom's cancer and them wanting to have a life, they don't go to every game. But generally, me and my dad at least have a few texts after every game. And so after the game where the Flames took down the Penguins, he, number one, said, Conrad, your language in the last video wasn't very good, and I agree with that. And he said, you are really angry. That's not a good look for someone who wants to be a serious journalist. I'm a serious journalist who's doing these shows from his basement. We'll see. But anyways, sorry about my language, Dad and fans. But my anger has not gone away. I'm going to temper it today because I think that was a better effort from the Flames. But my anger hasn't subsided. Because he posed me this question. And I'm not going word for word. He's asked, would I rather be a team like New Jersey, Vancouver, or New York? And I would say, as a fan, I would rather be any of the two of those teams, and maybe not one. And one I think is actually a cautionary tale for Calgary Flames fans who don't want to blow this thing up, and Marie Edwards and Don Maloney. Jersey has had some serious goaltending issues this year. Neither of their goalies can stop a beach ball. You saw that when they let Jacob Markstrom stand in and take the 9-0 defeat a few weeks ago, or this week. But that's always been known about Jacob Markstrom. One year, he could win the Vezina. The next year, beach balls get past him. It is what it is. That was known. You've also had some injuries, and you've had some of the fan letdown on the fact that you didn't end up winning the Hughes lottery to have the whole trio in New Jersey. But you've also seen in the last week this team saying we are going to start getting younger. We're allowing our aging, still good, right-handed defenseman Dougie Hamilton to look for greener pastures, start to get some of our young right-handed defensemen in because we think that's the way forward. Maybe this year isn't what we thought it was going to be, but we believe in our core, but Dougie's kind of on his way up. So they're getting younger, they're preparing, and understanding, hey, bad year, yeah, but we still got Jacob Markstrom, who could probably win us the Vezina next year if his history goes right. So they're in a different situation than the Flames. Then we look over in Vancouver, who lose again today. They're 8th straight. That's a team who knows how to tank. Vancouver is bad, but they admit they're bad. They were the first team, I think, in my brain, as far as timelines go, to actually say, we are going to tank. Everything that can go will. We're not even sure if we're going to keep the offensive Pettersson. Maybe they finally realized that if teams actually know the guy wearing 40 is the one you have to worry about. And who knows, maybe they decided to trade the wrong guy and their locker room situation has gotten even worse. I'm not paying a lot of attention to the very, very bad Vancouver Canucks team. But they have started to make smarter moves. Everyone and their dog thought that Jack Hughes was going to be going to New Jersey. You know who didn't think that? The Vancouver Canucks, who wanted to get the best possible trade and the best possible assets to accelerate the rebuild. So instead of being the good guys and trading him to New Jersey so he can be with his brother an extra year early, they dealt him to the highest bidder. They managed their assets, not feelings. And some people will say, oh, that's not very fair to the player, or that's not very fair to the fans. Know who also is not fair to their players? The Vegas Golden Knights. And people are like, and there's rumor. People always say with conjecture, oh, players don't want to go to Vegas so they don't want to be treated like trade chips when their contracts get a little bit bad. But if that's the case, why did Mitch Marner elect to go to Vegas? Why do players keep signing there? In spite of the fact that they now have Carter Hart, and that's a whole nother bag of chips I'm not going to get into. People go there because they want to win. Winning solves everything. Vancouver is playing into this model, and hey, you now might get Gavin McKenna. And hey, you got two top-tier assets in Marco Rossi and Zeev Buium. To a lesser extent, Ogren. And hey, you got a first-rounder. Is it going to be a late first-rounder? Probably. The Wild aren't all that great, so it could be middle. And I'll take a pick in the 15 to 16 range if it isn't your only pick because you're the Calgary Flames and you're mid. If you're drafting first and 15th, that's a pretty good place to be when you're a rebuilding Vancouver Canucks franchise. If you're drafting second and 20th, even better. Well, not even better. That's fine. They've increased their pace of their rebuild, while the Calgary Flames still won't admit it is a rebuild. I would take being a Vancouver Canucks in this season of pain, knowing that Thatcher Demko may not have knees anymore, so we need to probably go find a goaltender, because, hey, maybe we traded the wrong win away in the offseason. But we continue. We continue on to the one team I think needs to be a harrowing tale for this Calgary Flames team, and that is the New York Rangers. The New York Rangers have turned into the old boys club, and it is such a warning of what the Flames could be. Or hey, I argue already are. They're a team that believed in their guys, and including a couple of what they believed are generational goaltenders to right the ship. King Hank, obviously one of the best to ever play the position. And that guy, Igor Shesterkin, he's not bad either. I'd probably put him in my top 3 right now. Does that not remind you of a guy named Dustin Wolf? I'd argue it's similar. Let's continue with the comparisons between the Rangers and the Flames, because they're in similar spots in the standings. So you gotta think that, hey, maybe the Flames and the Rangers are more alike than they are different. Artemi Panarin, your big free agent, and some people are saying the only tradable asset, because other teams really think that Panarin can still manage to score goals despite only having 49 points this year. That really does remind me of Nazem Kadri. Guy who teams think, oh, he's a great offensive asset, he's a great player, despite the fact that he's now on a scoring drought and, as I said today, flew the zone a couple of times and not interested in playing in his own side whatsoever. JT Miller is having a relative disaster of a reunion tour, and most teams think he's a toxic asset because of what went down in Vancouver. And while there's not necessarily a like for like, there's a like for somewhat similar in the season that we saw from Mackenzie Weegar this year. His regression is not what we want to see, and you saw his mental health is not doing great with his face on the bench today, and he's not statistically what he was last year, despite playing with arguably a better fit on the other side with him. An aging Zibanejad is very similar to the Calgary Flames' Michael Backlund. A swing and a miss on Alexis Lafreniere, whose scoring touch hasn't shown back up. Could be a Connor Zary comparable outside of, I know, the last few weeks. That maybe the comparable needs to then shift on the Calgary side to a Matt Coronado, who actually thought looked very good today. Beloved goon in Matt Rempe, who fires up the guys and is a rah-rah guy that the team and the fan base seem to love. It sounds a lot like Ryan Lomberg to me. I don't think I need to go on, but the Flames and the Rangers are so similar that I think that's probably the comparison that Flames fans who are in delusion need to look at and realize, oh, that's who we are. We shouldn't be pointing and laughing. But as we're seeing now, the Calgary Flames now have an injury to Blake Coleman. Who knows how long this injury is going to be? This is a guy who, by all other reporting we're hearing, had drawn interest from numerous other teams, namely the Dallas Stars. He is now on the IR for an unknown length. And I know some people will say, oh, that's just trade precautionary. We don't know. None of us do. I don't know, and I don't think anyone in chat has access to the Flames injury report truly and fully. And hey, love to see Rasmus fight, but if he broke his hands, That severely limits the Calgary Flames trade options in one of the best top-end drafts the NHL has seen since the draft of Connor McDavid. So I think it's time to move on. The only way to compete is compete with the Jets, the Canucks, Rangers, Blue Jackets, Penguins for one of those top 5 seats. The higher you get, the less you can fall if the ping pong balls don't fall your way. And for the ownership group, like, how does this Flames team expect to rebuild through free agency or whatever? There isn't that many elite superstars that ever go into free agency. The one that did in recent memory that everyone thought was going to change the fortunes was Steven Stamkos. Scored today, but he's my comparison. If that is the superstar that you can get in free agency, look how well that's gone for the Preds. The Preds are barely scraping by, despite getting good goaltending numbers. Not great, but good. So that's what you get. You get an aging star in the back nine of his career, rather than having the fans be able to build excitement, whether that be McKenna, Verhoff, or whoever else finds their way at the end of the year. We'll figure it out. But boy, we feel like a team that doesn't have leadership, either in the front office or on the ice. This is a directionless team, and it's only going to get worse. But that's how it needs to go. So we'll head into period number 3 and discuss some of these trades and the fact that we've heard now that Rasmus Andersson is beginning to gain some traction, and according to Elliot Friedman, could be moving before the Olympic break. And we'll also talk a little bit about Martin Pospisil heading to the Wranglers for a conditioning stint and what that means for the Calgary Flames middle six. The fact that we are hearing that Rasmus is probably going to be moved ahead of the Olympic break makes all the sense in the world to me. Get him to the point where that roster does freeze, and hey, you don't know what can go wrong when he's over in Italy. Any number of things can happen, and it's completely out of your control. Whether he has a great Olympics or a poor Olympics, you don't know. He's had a great run-up to hitting this break to go play on subpar ice surfaces halfway across the world. God, the fact that the ice surfaces they played on in Korea are better than what we're playing in when we have NHL talent going to the Olympics. Yikes. Not my point. Trade Rasmus right before the deadline. Or the roster freeze, rather. Not the trade deadline, the roster freeze. Let him have this last stretch as a Calgary Flame. Let him get his cookies. But he needs to go. And he needs to go soon. The longer you hold on to these guys like Blake Coleman, Nazem Kadri, it allows for the worst possible thing for your rebuild to happen and injuries to occur. And the fact that you're trading guys like Kadri, Coleman, Rasmus, and you're doing it right this time. You're not allowing Noah Hannafin to dictate the two teams that he'll be going to. You're beginning to understand what this fan base has been clamoring for, and you're making a move to ensure the best possible result, which in a way is the worst possible result. But let's talk about Martin Pospisil. After missing, oh boy, a lot of time, it's nice to hear finally some positive news on Martin Pospisil. Like, is it the ideal solution for the Calgary Flames in the short, medium, long term? Who knows? But if Martin Pospisil comes back and can be a stronger middle six winger than Adam Klapka has proven to be in these last 2 games, that's an upgrade. If it allows the Flames to finally send William Stromgren back down, because what was his time on ice today? Let me double check, because I did not see a lot of that third line. Clarkland saw about 10 minutes due to his penalty killing. William Stromgren played less than 7 minutes. And I apologize for this video shaking, but that's me hitting my desk. William Stromgren, who should not be playing bottom 6 minutes with this current version of the Calgary Flames, allow him to go back down to the Wranglers and play like a hockey player again, instead of being stapled to the short end of the bench by Ryan Huska. When Ryan Lomberg gets 7 minutes and 35 seconds, a full minute more ice time than William Stromgren, who is being asked to play his off wing in a 4th line role, that's pretty unexcusable to me. So hey, maybe Marty Party comes in, plays out the season. We'll take that. Yeah, Huberdeau plays 17 minutes. Michael Backlund played 20 minutes and 31 seconds. Hey, I think he was the best Flames forward tonight. I don't think there's going to be many people that argue with me. And hey, he's missing his safety blanket that is Blake Coleman for the next little while, and potentially for the rest of his career. But boy, it's starting to feel like the clock has struck midnight, the carriage has turned back into a pumpkin, and the Calgary Flames have finally figured out that Team Tank is the only way forward if they want fans to be in that fancy new building opening in 2 years. But let's head into overtime. We got a couple questions from Matt C. I want to address. I got some other comments that have been just waiting to be answered. Let's go all the way back. Great result for Team Tank. Yep. Tank Commander Conrad agrees with that one. And as I've said numerous times, I will take these games where the Flames fight back and just barely lose. I am okay with that, especially when you lose in regulation. You don't have to worry about the pity point. Perfect. I will take that as well. Choke number 1 asking what was that? I think I've given that a pretty good breakdown. If it wasn't for Anderson, this game wouldn't have been as entertaining. 100% agree. But I will take my first round pick and a prospect from your system. Hopefully better than the rumors that we've heard. Hopefully Craig Conroy has figured that one out. We'll trade it. We have to trade him, but I will really miss Raz from Matt C. Let's trade for Pettersson since Vancouver is rebuilding and we will never. Toke, yeah, brilliant. Anand has late classes at Mount Royal this semester, so I have to take some of these early East Coasters. No problem. Frustrating turnover by Uyghur. Yeah, saw it. We talked about his reaction. Interesting comment here from Matt earlier. Raz and Coleman have done wonders for their trade returns recently, but Naz may have drafted him so far that there will be no offers. I don't foresee that being the case. I think it's been bad for Kadri in terms of what Kadri has been in the past, but I think lots of NHL general managers know that he's playing on one of the worst teams in the NHL, and they expect closer to what they saw in Colorado than they do here in Calgary. Are they right? Are they wrong? We have no way of knowing. None of us have a crystal ball, as I've said, but I think that's what NHL general managers feel. Flames sadly do a lot of floating from Denim Man. Yeah, they do. They do a lot of floating around the murky middle. They do a lot of floating not getting into their own zone. They do a lot of floating in a lot of different ways. Talked about the fact that the Calgary Flames went 3 for 3, 100% on the power play. Yeah, that's a weird one. Yeah, you go 3 for 3 and still lose. You're perfect on the power play and can't score a goal 5-on-5. That is the Calgary Flames, ladies and gentlemen. When did Backlund learn to score and why now? Backlund's learned to... He is the captain and needs to do everything for this team. I wish sometimes he wouldn't, being on Team Tank as firmly as I am. Everyone wants to go to Vegas. Everybody wants to rule the world. But people want to go to Vegas, especially single players want to go to Vegas. It's apparently a lot of the ones that have families that don't. Various reasons for that. Ottawa Senators situation. Anyways, I've said this a lot, and I can vouch for that, but one of the things the Flames need to do is pick a lane and fully commit. Holy moly. How many times have I said that on this show? The Flames can't be this, I want my 2 rounds of playoff revenue for Murray Edwards and co., but I also want skill and talent. Or if you're Don Maloney, I like my core because they're all on my fantasy team and my fantasy team may be winning. If it is, tell me how, because I got a lot of Flames on my fantasy team and I'm not doing a lot of winning. But yeah. Could this have been Rasmus's last game? I'll end on that. Huberdeau and Stromgren should trade places. Huberdeau has been next to useless, and Stromgren needs more playing time. With Ryan Huska, that will never happen. The only way we see Jonathan Huberdeau that far down the lineup is if he lops off his own hand at a team dinner and is not in the lineup. Hey, all these other teams, like wasn't it New Jersey we were talking about earlier that had the situation. Oh, and I apologize, my overlay got rid of our memorials for the Goudreaus. I apologize about that. But yeah, all these other teams have had these freak off-ice incidents. Like, are we that cursed we can't even have that as a Calgary Flames fan base to talk about? Oh, Jonathan Huberdeau went to Caesars and scalded his mouth on the delicious, delicious cheese toast. I'll be out 3 to 4 weeks because he can't breathe. Like, why can we not even just have a funny story like that? Yeah, William Stromgren, unacceptable usage of that young man. Denim Man, I have the crystal ball. I've been up all night pondering the orb. Hey, can you ponder a better trade from your Detroit Red Wings than the offer that everyone has been hearing for the last few days? I'll take that if you do. Yeah, let's talk about this. Could this have been Rasmus Andersson's last game? I don't necessarily think so. I think you will see him... I think you'll see him in one last home game. I think you will at least see him play against the Islanders. Maybe you get him all the way to the break that takes place. And I just realized the Flames and Oilers, they love to place those games around these longer breaks. I don't know why. Maybe drag in fans that want to watch this team for whatever reason. I don't think you'll see him get all the way to that game against the Oilers February 4th, because I think the Olympic roster lock... they don't have that listed. But yeah, I don't see him going to February 4th. I think you probably let him have his one last game against the Islanders and then send him down to Dallas or Detroit. And you see the Flames start to tumble down the standings even further. But I think that's it for me tonight. 41 minutes of talking about this Calgary Flames team and trying to stay a little bit more positive and keep my language out of the sewer is enough for me. Thank you so much to everybody tuned in today. Matt C, Toke, Denim Man, Anand. I hope I didn't miss anyone. I don't think so. For everyone watching on VODs, I did see we had a comment on the previous video. Good to see that coming along. Because, boy howdy, I'd love to see some more comments as the Flames continue their trend. was from Ball Hockey Videos Manitoba, who tuned in. Thank you to that viewer who said, it looks like Team Tank is between Winnipeg, Calgary, and Vancouver. We'll have to see which of the Canadian Western Conference teams has the worst ending. Hopefully, it's your Calgary Flames. We'll see you around. I believe I have the next one as the Calgary Flames will take on the Chicago Blackhawks for their last game of this Eastern road trip on Thursday. Thanks, everyone.